Good day, everyone. Our lesson for this week is about figurative language and creative nonfiction. The learning objective is identify how literary devices, idioms, and figures of speech are used in creative nonfiction, similar to that of fictional works. So, let's get started.
Figurative language is a word or phrase that departs from literal language to express comparison, add emphasis or clarity, or make the writing more interesting with the addition of color or freshness. So, figurative language is different from the literal words that we are using. Okay, kasi yung figurative language gives us color when we are reading the book or when we are writing a story or an essay. So, itong figurative language, tinutulungan tayo bilang mga mambabasa na mas ma-imagine natin yung binabasa natin story or essay when it comes to narrative. And of course, karamihan sa mga writer, mas nakikita natin or mas nababasa natin itong mga figurative languages na to sa poetry. Okay, so it gives us more image when the writer uses figurative language. Figures of speech are also known as figures of rhetoric, figures of style, rhetorical figures, figurative language, and schemas. So, like what I have said, figurative language is often associated with literature and with poetry in particular. Why figurative language is important to good writing? Figurative language can transform ordinary descriptions into evocative events, enhance the emotional significance of passages, and turn prose into a form of poetry. It can also help the reader to understand the underlying symbolism of a scene, or more fully recognize a literary theme. Figurative language is the hands of a talented writer is one of the tools that turn ordinary writing into literature. It means, ginagamit natin ang figurative language para mas ma-enhance yung emotional significance ng mga sinusulat ng mga writer or yung mga sinusulat natin sa essay natin or sa story. Then why? For example, we are using figurative language to express our own deep feelings sa mga character na sinusulat natin. How does the reader feel that kind of emotion if we do not use figurative language when delivering those passages? So, how are we going to use figurative language effectively? I have here some tips that might help you when you are writing your essay or your story. Tip number 1. Always know why you are using figurative language. Why say, our love is dead, rather than, I don't love you anymore? Does the expression sound right in your character's mouth? Does it fit your tone and style? If not, don't use it. What is your purpose when you are including figurative language in your story or in your essay or maybe in the passage or statement of the character? It is important that you know the purpose, you know your goal when you are writing a story with figurative language. Bakit mas magandang pakinggan yung our love is dead kesa sa hindi na kita mahal? Okay, is it sound right to your character? Mas masakit bang marinig yung hindi na kita mahal kaysa sa our love is dead? So think about it. What is your purpose when you are using figurative language on your essay? So that will help you and the readers identify your message or your meaning to the character's statement or passage. Tip number 2. Choose your figures of speech carefully. For example, you can write, her beauty hit me in the eye like a squirt of juice from a grapefruit. But how would such a simile enhance your fiction or expand upon the meaning of your book? Perhaps you have a character with serious communication issues for whom it will be appropriate. Otherwise, skip it. why we should be careful when we are using figurative language. It is important, like what I have said earlier, that you must know your purpose when you are using or when you are including figurative language on your essay or in your story. Sometimes, we are overreacting the use of figurative language in our essay, in our story, or in any narrative works. So, it is important that you know the meaning of those figurative language. Makukuha ba siya ng reader kapag binasa niya yun? Bagay ba yung ginamit ninyong figurative language sa scene, sa character trait, sa personality ng character? Then, bakit mo ginagamit yung figurative language sa iyong statement or into a character statement? So, you have your own purpose. You have your own way on how to use figurative language. But, always remember that you must be careful. Baka minsan, nagiging overuse na yung mga figurative language or sobrang daming figurative language doon sa story mo or doon sa sentence mo. So, tend na hindi na siya na iintindihan ng mga magbabasa. So, be careful. Use figurative language sparingly. A paragraph that is loaded with similes and metaphors can be dense and difficult to understand. Select the figures of speech that serve your purpose, enhancing mood, meaning, or theme. But don't use figurative language simply because you can. Katulad na sinabi ko kanina, kailangan you have your purpose, kailangan hindi mo siya ino-overuse, and last, it must be used properly. Kapag sobrang daming figurative language, figures of speech sa statement, kada statement mo, kada bato ng dialogue ng mga character, meron figures of speech, then make sure na hindi ito na-overuse. Okay? Make sure na ang purpose ito is to enlighten or to give highlights or to enhance the mood, the meaning, or the theme of the story or your essay. So, hindi mo lang siya ginagamit kasi marunong kang gumamit ito or kaya mong gamitin to. Or every time, pwede mo siyang gamitin. Hindi ganon. So, kailangan alamin mo kung kailan lang dapat gamitin or kailan lang dapat include ang figure of speech at kung kailan hindi. Because, mas maunawaan ng reader kung naintindihan nila din yung gusto mong iparating as a writer. If you are using figurative language as a dialogue, be sure it is appropriate for that character. Avoid putting flowery phrases into the mouths of characters who speak plainly. May mga characters na hindi bagay yung mga dialogue nila. Why? May mga characters na kapag ginanggit mo yung dialogue or yung passage nila, hindi siya po pwede doon sa ibang characters. Why? Because every character has unique characteristics, has unique attitudes, has unique personality. So, nasa sa inyo bilang writer kung paano nyo gagamitin yung figurative language sa bawat character. And make sure na yung traits, personalities, and attitudes ng character ninyo babagay yung figurative of language na ginawa ninyo para sa kanila, na ginawa ninyong dialogue para sa kanila. So, that is very important para ma-build din yung kanilang characterization. So, they could develop and enhance the characteristics of the character. So, you have to be careful when you are using your figurative language. So, hindi lahat bagay ang figurative language sa lahat ng characters. So, may binabagayan din ito. Okay? Let us proceed to idiomatic expression. An idioms is an expression or phrase that takes on a symbolic meaning. This means that you cannot take it literally. For example, it's raining cats and dogs. It doesn't literally mean that cats and dogs are indeed falling from the sky. Rather, it means it's raining heavier than usual. Why should we use idioms? There are many people who insist on writing as simply as possible. They think that doing so makes them more professional writers. I have here some reasons why idioms is a good thing. Number 1. It lets you to be more creative. Using idioms lets you think outside the box. Stating your thoughts this way will not only make way for better writing, it also helps your reader relate to what you are saying. So, kapag gumagamit tayo ng idioms, nagiging creative tayo. And always remember that writing is a form of art. That's why it is more challenging if we use this figurative language and idiomatic expression in our essay or narrative stories. Number 2, it saves you from more grammatical mistakes. Using idioms will relieve you from this kind of situation. Why? Because since it's less formal, it is much easier to construct. Apart from that, idioms can also be slang expressions, which means that they aren't very sensitive to grammar, as long as you convey the message. Number 3, it makes you look smart. I think we can all agree that even though we consider idioms to be a less formal instrument of writing, only a few people can actually understand what these idioms mean. So being able to use idioms in your sentence means that you are knowledgeable about what you are talking. Last, it makes you more persuasive. You will never meet one persuasive writer or speaker that speaks in a very formal language. Because you won't convince people by using highfalutin words. They'll get bored and probably stop reading. The hardest part about proving your point is gaining the trust of the reader. The only way you'll be able to do so effectively is if the reader sees himself and how you state your points. Let's proceed to imagery. Imagery is language used by poets, novelists, and other writers to create images in the mind of the reader. Imagery includes figurative and metaphorical language to improve the reader's experience through their senses. So, under ng imagery, bakit natin ginagamit or ano ba yung imagery? This is the images na nag-a-appear sa inyong mind when you are reading the story or essay or the poetry. So what is the importance of imagery? Because we experience life through our senses. A strong composition should appeal to them through the use of imagery. So, when to use imagery? Imagery should be used anytime a description is considered. So it is necessary. Why? Because imagery is often found in narratives, stories, poems, plays, speeches, songs, movies, television shows, and other creative compositions. It uses a combination of literal and poetic figurative language. Thus, it should not be used in technical and literal writing such as mathematical manuals and scientific reports. We are using imagery para mas maintindihan or mas ma-imagine ng mga reader yung inyong sinusulat. So, sometimes, we should be more descriptive when we are describing the scene, when we are writing the dialogue or statement for the characters. So, para hindi maging boring yung story mo, kailangan specific yung details para mas ma-imagine ng readers kung ano meron doon sa story or doon sa sinasabi ng character. For example, it is way different kapag sinabi ng character or inamin ng character sa nagugustuhan niya na gusto kita. Parang walang dating. Okay? So, paano magkakaroon ng twist? Paano magkakaroon ng dating yung salitang mahal kita or gusto kita? Okay, so sometimes, gumagamit ang mga writer or ng mga author ng iba't ibang senses that will trigger the senses also of the readers. So, po pwede nating sabihin na lagi mo siyang dinadalhan ng pagkain, lagi mo siyang tinitip, lagi mo siyang tinatanong kung kumain ka na ba, diba? Feel na feel niyo yan. Bakit? Kasi you are dealing with your emotions. So, with your senses. So, paano nyo na ipaparamdam sa isang tao kung mahal niyo sila or kung gusto niyo sila? So, there are a lot of ways on how to use those words to be specific when we are telling our feelings to the other people. When we are using imagery or when we are creating the image in our essay or in our story, it is important that you open the senses of your readers. The sight, sense of taste, sense of touch, sense of hearing, sense of smell. So, importante na yung senses na yun active when you are writing a story or an essay. In imagery, you have to describe everything. For example, in a scene, ano yung nakikita dyan sa paligid? Ano nakikita ng character dyan sa environment niya? So, you have to explain lahat ng details. You have to give the description para mas nai-imagine ng reader kung ano meron doon sa setting, doon sa scene. Next, ano ang nararamdaman ng character? Dapat, when you are writing the character's scene or the character's feeling, dapat maramdaman din ng reader kung ano yung nararamdaman ng character. Pag malungkot siya, hindi pwedeng sasabihin lang ng character na lulungkot ako. Masaya ako. Hindi ganon. Dapat mas creative tayo when we are describing the characters, the feelings of the characters. Paano mo maipapakita na malungkot yung character? Paano mo maipapakita na masaya yung character? For example, pag masaya ang character, anong meron sa mukha ng character? So you have to describe the eyes of the character, yung kanyang labi, yung kanyang teeth, no? Anong meron doon you have to provide every detail doon sa mukha niya para makita or ma-imagine ng reader kung ano ang expression ng character. Pag sinabi mo, masaya lang siya, pag sinabi lang ng character na masaya siya na nakita kanya, or for example, I am so happy to see you. Ganun lang, walang description. So, pwede naman sabihin ng character yon na I am so happy to see you. Pero as a writer, it is your responsibility na mas mabigyan ng description kung anong meron sa mukha ng character. Para mas ma-imagine nila na, ganun pala yung tsura ng character. Yung eyes niya, maybe nag-spark yung eyes, no? Nung nakita niya yung tao. Kasi nga, masaya siya. Right? So, siguro yung saya, makikita doon na nakita na yung gilagid ng character. So, para lang masabi na masaya. Okay, so, the point is, you have to be descriptive. Kailangan mo i-describe lahat. Okay? Kapag gusto mong ipakita yung emotions, yung feelings, yung mga nasa paligid, kung ano yung nararamdaman ng character, kung ano yung nakikita ng character. So, that is imagery. That's all for today, and have a good day.